Hello everybody, good morning. Welcome to this virtual conference organized by the World Sustainability Forum, which was supposed to be held in my hometown of Geneva and is now happening virtually, which is also quite nice because we get to have people from all over the world without the carbon emissions, I guess, of travel. My name is Mardine Sahakian, and I am Assistant Professor of Sociology at the University of Geneva, and I work on issues related to sustainable consumption, of which, of course, mobility is a part. So I was very happy to act as chair for today's program on transport and mobility. I find mobility to be a fascinating area of study, not least as a sociologist, because it's about consuming space. It's about being sort of flexible and mobile in an increasingly globalized and interconnected world. But mobility is also a massive challenge when it comes to sustainability transitions, as you all know, because of its impacts in terms of environmental impacts, but perhaps also in terms of social impacts in relation to inequalities. So the program today is divided into different parts. We're starting and ending with a panel on disruptive trends, which in some cases also includes some reflection on inclusiveness. There's then another session on smart mobility and digitalization this morning, which I will also chair. After that break, Christoph Ratz has kindly agreed to chair another series of sessions. There will be one on spatial planning and transportation challenges, one on understanding impacts, and then two panels on aspirations and acceptance. So very near and dear to my heart in terms of understanding consumption approaches, and ending again with a panel on disruptive trends and inclusiveness. And all this will be followed by some concluding remarks by Ed Constable. So I'm delighted that all of the authors are here with us this morning. Without further delay, I suggest that we begin the session on disruptive trends and inclusiveness. As you all know, you have 10 minutes to present, and we really must be very firm with this. So when you have 1 minute left, I might sort of raise a hand or try and get your attention. And at the end of your 10 minutes, I will probably have to interrupt you, unfortunately, if you go over. And then we'll get just a few questions that are very, let's say, questions of comprehension. And then we'll leave some time for an open Q&A and discussion at the end. I hope that's fine with everyone. We're starting with Sujayita Bhattacharjee, and Sujayita will be presenting Beyond Mobility, the practicality of working from home as an alternative to daily commuting for the working women of Mumbai metropolitan region. Sujayita, I'm very pleased to welcome you here and look forward to your talk on an issue that is sort of relevant to all of us at this time. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to start. Hello everyone, I'm Sujayita Bhattacharjee. I'm currently pursuing my PhD from the University of Mumbai. And the title of my presentation today is Beyond Mobility, the Practicality of Working from Home as an Alternative to Daily Commuting for the Working Women of Mumbai Metropolitan Region. The flexibility to work from home is considered as a privilege, especially in the cities, as it allows one to work from the comforts of their homes without requiring them to commute to their workplaces for long durations on a daily basis. It is also believed to provide more personal and family time. Hence, if granted as a choice, it is often appreciated by the working people. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, work from home practices in India were prevalent only in certain sectors of work, and that too in a limited number. But following the outbreak of the pandemic and imposition of lockdown, more than 3 billion people in India have been compelled to work from their homes. Thus, the once rare opportunity of working from home has turned into an obligatory practice. The present study questions the viability of working from home as an alternative to daily commuting for the working women of Mumbai metropolitan region. The study specifically focuses on the working women because most homes in India have a gendered character where the women of the family, irrespective of their employment status, are expected to manage the functioning of their homes. This is more so in the case of the married women. The practices of sharing domestic chores and housework in a gender neutral manner are practically non existent in most of the households in India. Under this scenario of the pandemic and lockdown, where households have been cut off from their domestic helps, the impact on the lives of the working women who are now not only present at home 24/7, but are also working from their homes raises concerns. The study is in the context of the MMR, that is Mumbai Metropolitan Region, which is one of the most densely populated urban agglomerations of the world. The city of Mumbai, lying at its core, is an economic hub of India. The women of MMR are involved more in regular jobs than casual jobs or self-employment practices. People in the MMR are known to commute for long hours to reach their places of work. In fact, commuting is considered to be an integral part of life in the region. However, the scenario has changed under the pandemic. The adoption of work from home practices. As a result of this, what has happened is most of the service sector employees of the region have been working from their homes since the last week of March 2020. The study seeks to examine the scenario of restricted mobility as brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. It seeks to explore the working women's perspective on working from home in the study area and to understand their perspectives on restricted mobility. To scrutinize, and it tries to, the study attempts to scrutinize whether working from home is a viable alternative to daily commuting for the working women of the study area. The study uses both primary and secondary data and is based on a mixed methodology. The primary data was collected by means of an online survey conducted on the working women of the MMR. The secondary data for the study was collected from various sources such as books, reports, journals, news articles, and websites. The data thus collected are processed and analyzed quantitatively as well as qualitatively to derive the findings of the study. On reviewing the existing literature, it is found that although commuting to work is often considered undesirable, many studies have suggested otherwise. Rothbard and Ramrajan 2009, Zekimovis et al. 2016, and Flint et al. 2016, etc. have stressed on the importance of commuting to work in their studies. However, Ibarra et al. Have noted that the ability to work from home is often justified for the women on the grounds that it allows them to have more family time and time for childcare, etc. There are also studies that point out the drawbacks that women are likely to face while working from home. A recurring finding derived by these studies is that working from home is more likely to add domestic responsibilities on the women and lead to the strengthening of gender roles. Now, coming to the issue of pandemic lockdown and restricted mobility. As the SARS-CoV-2 virus started spreading in India, the government of the country called for a 21 days lockdown to commence from the 25th of March 2020, which had to be extended further in the wake of the growing number of COVID-19 cases in the country. As a result, mobility patterns in the country have changed significantly. As per Google's COVID-19 Community Mobility Report, the percentage of people visiting public transport stations in India on the 17th of February 2020 was 2%, which on the 17th of August 2020 was minus 39%. The highest drop can be seen on the 17th of April, which is minus 67.1%. Similar trend is not noted with respect to people visiting their places of work. However, contrary to these scenarios, the data on the time spent at home has shown a completely opposite trend. Based on the progress of the pandemic, relaxations in some form or other have been granted in various areas since the 20th of April. In spite of this, mobility has remained limited. The travel lockdown in the MMR has been relaxed since the month of June, opening up inter-district travel for those residing within the limits of the municipal corporation. Also, the private sector offices of the region have been allowed to function, while the educational institutions have only been allowed to carry out non-teaching activities. However, non-essential travel are not permitted. Despite these relaxations, most private sector offices in the MMR have continued to operate remotely through work from home practices due to the prevalence of the pandemic. The experiences of working from home. Working from home has created a diverse set of experiences for the working women of MMR. A vast majority of women, that is 90.6%, have termed their experience of working from home to be negative. The most frequent phrases in their description of their work from home experience are analyzed to reveal that 20.8% pointed out to stressful life, 11.3% to depressed life, 9.4% to stagnant life, and so on. Only a few respondents described positive experience such as more personal time and increased productivity. Coming to the perspectives on restricted mobility, I would highlight certain related aspects. Those are that more than 80% of all the motorized trips in MMR are undertaken on public bus and rail services, of which more than half are taken on the rail services. The suburban railway services, also known as the locals, are highly preferred by the working people of the region for daily commuting. Around 8 million people use 2,900 of these trains to commute across the region, and during the peak hours, these trains are nearly 4 times crowded than their network capacity. With the pandemic and lockdown, as mobility has become restricted, it has shaped the perspectives of the daily commuters. According to the description given by the respondents, according to one of the respondents, not being able to go to office has led to decreasing interaction with colleagues and friends. This has created a depressing scenario at home. Another respondent states, I haven't met my train friends for 5 months now. I miss the daily chit chats on the train that we used to have on our way to office and back. Sometimes we also shared food items. It was an experience on its own. It is worth mentioning in this regard that women who travel regularly by the Mumbai's local trains have several reasons for not missing the train. Other than reaching their places of work, of course, the women's compartment in these trains have a lot more to offer. The regularly traveling women celebrate birthdays, farewells, and festivals with their co-passengers with whom they have bonded in course of their travels and have become friends. According to another respondent, the very practice of commuting to work helped me in taking off my mind from domestic problems. But now, since I'm stuck at home with remote work, domestic chores and other family members all day long, I feel my stress levels have increased. Another respondent states domestic quarrels have increased at home under the lockdown. Not being able to go to the workplace has taken away a means of escaping these domestic troubles. As a result, physical and mental exhaustion has increased. The discussion made so far reveals that working from home during the pandemic has not been easy. It has increased the burden on the working woman greatly due to lack of sharing of domestic work and the inability to get away from domestic troubles. The women are overburdened. As a result, working from home has proved to be highly impractical for the working women of MMR, thus forcing the need for an importance of mobility in their lives. With this, I would like to conclude. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Suyajita, and also for keeping the time. We're going to have a discussion at the end, but does anyone have a question already that you'd like to ask? If not, maybe I could ask you to just make one maybe clarification. From what I understand, the way the domestic sphere is sort of configured in India is very particular in the sense that women marry into their husband's family. Is that correct? It may not be obvious for the non-Indians on the call. Can you describe a little bit? I mean, I'm assuming these women are living with their in-laws and are responsible for their children, etc.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. Women generally get married. I mean, there are certain societies where, it's not mandatory for women to go and stay in their husband's place after marriage, but that is very rare. In general, what happens is women gets married and they go and stay in the places where their husbands and in-laws live, mostly in joint families. Even if they don't stay in joint families, what the scenario is that it is expected from them to take care of their domestic responsibilities. It is like when a woman gets married, it is her responsibility to take care of her husband, then her kids, and everything that is going on at home. So what happens is mostly when working women are working, they employ domestic helps because it lowers their burden. But under the lockdown, the domestic helps are not able to come
Mm-hmm.
to these
Yeah,
places. So their burden has increased. They are required to work at home. At the same time, they are required to perform their official and other tasks at home. At the same time, they are homeschooling their kids because schools are not functioning right now. All digital classes and all this are going on. So
exactly. Yeah.
they are required to take a lot of responsibilities.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for that, Sujata. And we'll come back to this conversation,
Thank
I
you.
guess, in the discussion. So now I'd like to give the floor to Benjamin Jacobson, who is going to talk to us about corporate car sharing with incentive system for ecologically sustainable driving as an alternative for ecologically sensible short and medium business trips. So we look forward to hearing from you, Benjamin. You have 10 minutes.
So good morning, and yes, like you mentioned it, it's not ecologically, so it's ecologically and economically.
That's better.
Yeah, I think so too.
Sorry about that. It was misspelled in the program.
Yeah, it's all right. Okay, dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is Benjamin Jacobson. I am pleased to participate in this World Sustainable Forum today as a representative of the Chemnitz University of Technology. As you will see on the next slide, this university has a high level of competence in questions of electromobility and sustainable energy supply. Today, I have prepared a presentation on the results of a former study on cooperative car sharing and whether incentives can be given to make corporate car sharing ecologically and economically more sustainable than other mobility solutions for companies. So as I said, research on sustainable mobility and energy solution has a long history in Chemnitz and is still being investigated further with new research projects and resources. So you can see in this picture some people and with modern cars and bikes and something like this. In addition to ecological and economic sustainability, questions on energy supply and user perspective, as well as value chains of mobility and energy supply are dealt with. Topics relating to vehicle user and vehicle usage, as well as service and providers relating to electromobility and energy services will be considered. So the data I'm talking about today was collected in the research project Ecomobility. Within this project, employees of the Chemnitz University of Technology were provided with an in-company mobility solution over a period of 3 years, which corresponds to a normal corporate car sharing model. Users could use public transport, 8 pedelecs, and 4 electric vehicles to commute between or outside the university sites. The access was keyless, but the service was intended for official travel only. So, but why do we need corporate car sharing? Why it is necessary? Every company needs mobility. So you can say we need a corporate mobility as a service solution for every company. For such a solution, various types of design are possible. You can see in this big morphologically box the characteristics of the examined example, so ecomobility, are colored blue. So we see we have our own fleet, but we need a third-party fleet, so the public transport, for example. The aim of the study was to improve not only the ecological but also the economic advantage of the corporate solution, which is presented today. The project has shown that this economic advantage is mainly influenced by the opportunity costs and by administrative costs. So let us start with the administrative costs, whose one aim of the mobility solution should be to minimize or even completely eliminate the administrative costs. Because 3.47 euros administrative costs will be charged on every business trip in this project or in a average German company. You can see that when you use a non-in-company solution, a certain amount of working time is spent on business trip verification and settlement. Here, this yellow box. And if an in-company solution is used, this component is eliminated, which corresponds to a cost reduction of about 20% on average per business trip in the case which was investigated. The situation is similar for the opportunity cost. Opportunity costs arise for slower movement on the resulting loss of working time. They therefore represent the time lost through to lower speed multiplied by the hourly or rate of pay. In the case studies, pedelec and public transport were equally fast but slower than the car. Overall, using the car as the fastest mean of transport saved 10% of the total mobility costs. It must be underlined that this is a single result. Even small changes would reduce the average speed of the car, which would reshuffle the cars completely. In summary, it can be said that in the present study, the choice of electric cars was the most economically sustainable, but long-term solutions for more sustainable corporate mobility should be looked for. According to the report, the economic saving made by choosing the fastest mean of transport, which does not require complicated invoicing, should be used to develop more ecologically sustainable mobility solutions. However, this is a medium to long-term process. On the short run, incentives for a more ecologically sustainable use of mobility solutions should be implemented. So here you can see a data table of 4 phases that were distinguished in the granting of incentives. Initially, the mobility solutions was made available without any incentives. This is the benchmark. Then incentives were given in the form of a web-based competition. There were no prizes, but the results were anonymous and visible for every user, and everyone wanted to be the best energy saver, so you can say. This was a form of gamification. There was also a competition in which users could not compare themselves or to each other, but the winner receives a shopping cart. So this was the monetary incentives. And the last phase can be called a follow-up phase. No more incentives were given. The phase can be used to measure the sustainability, the after effect of the previous incentives. On the next slide, you can see the average power requirements of the trips during these phases graphically. And clearly you can see that the energy requirement was lowest during the gamification here. And this can be seen not only in the average, the green line, but above all at the maximum confidence interval. This was very interesting. But let us now come to the conclusion and the discussion of our foundings. So this slide shows all statements I mentioned and explained during the presentation, but all points lead to the statement that in-company solutions are economically favorable and should be environmentally friendly as possible. And yeah, with these words, I thank you a lot for your attention. And yeah, thank you a lot.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. You actually stayed well within the time, even with a minute or two to spare. Perhaps I'll turn first to the audience and see if there are any questions. Please do speak up because I don't necessarily see everybody's hands going up. Any questions from the audience? Okay, so if not, maybe I can ask a question or two while other people are thinking. Thank you so much for this very interesting study. I see that you really went into detail to try and understand the impacts of switching to electric vehicles in-house. Your argument about in-house being more efficient economically has to do with bringing the service internally and using cars as a faster way to travel. It could lead to an interpretation that fossil fuel powered cars are better than bicycles when managed in-house. How do you get around that? Are you also looking at the environmental impacts of bicycles versus cars?
Yeah.
And are you internalizing other externalities in your understanding of costs?
Yeah. Of course, we looked at this environmentally impacts, but I have to mention the cars we used don't were petrol cars. This was it was electric cars, so small electric smarts. And yeah, this was a main point of this project. So we only used environmentally friendly cars, so you can say. And
yes, I see that, but the argument could then be made for cars in general, is my point. I understand that your presentation.
It's absolutely correct. But because this, I mentioned this point here, so we need some critical indicators to make more environmentally friendly solutions the most beneficial from the economical point of view. So the problem or the special point in this research was that we are here in Chemnitz, and Chemnitz is a very car-friendly city, so you can say. With the car you are very fast, and you can't go as fast as with the car with a bus or with the bicycle. And this is the main point of our results. So, for example, if you want to go to the to Milano or to Berlin, so I think the bicycle will be the best. And yeah.
Thank you so much. Great. Any other questions for Benjamin? If not, we'll come back, I guess, to your paper in the Q&A. So we're doing very good on time this morning because we actually had one of our speakers cancel her paper. So I will now give the floor to Pooja Banerjee, who will talk about micromobility and mobility sharing, a shift towards a clear and sustainable urban future. Pooja, we look forward to hearing you, and you have 10 minutes.
Hello everyone, I am Pooja Banerjee, a PhD scholar at Department of Geography, University of Mumbai. So is my screen visible to all? So we know that to make a city sustainable, inclusive, prosperous and resilient, its transportation system should facilitate a safe, efficient and pollution-free flow of people and goods, which will provide an affordable, healthy and integrated mobility for all. And in this movement towards a sustainable, resilient city, micro-mobility and mobility sharing plays a significant role. So today my presentation is on micro-mobility and mobility sharing, a shift towards a clear and sustainable urban future, wherein my focus will be on Indian scenario. So now, what is micro-mobility and mobility sharing? Micromobility is relatively a new concept. At its simplest, micromobility is joining up of every different form of transport to make our journey as quick and easy as possible, especially the first and last mile connectivity that is often encountered in several cities. It refers to small range of small and lightweight devices operating typically speed below 25 km per hour and is ideal for trip up to 10 km. And since our cities are facing high traffic congestion and higher increase in the pollution level, the shared mobility is highly encouraged. Whereas broadly shared mobility refer to any mode of transportation that is shared by user on an as needed basis. On an as needed basis, initiating a better fleet utilization, allowing more passengers and goods to travel in same vehicle or vehicle kilometer travel. In India, Uber and Ola services, share services is highly encouraged and is successful to an extent. So why do we need this sharing mobility? Firstly is because of efficient travel. It helps in fighting the increased traffic congestion, and it reduces vehicular density on road. And for sharing distances, there is a reduction in transportation cost, thus it is economical. And since the vehicular density on road reduces, so the fuel consumption is also declining, and the use of e-cycles and e-scooters is highly eco-friendly. So it helps in reviving our environment as well. And the newer form of transportation means opening up of newer enterprises and companies, so a wider job market is created. So if we want to look into an Indian scenario, there are a lot of opportunities for shared mobility. India has a lower per capita vehicular ownership that only 32% among 1,000 own personal car, which is 797 in USA. So government is via many policy framework is trying to provide a supportive environment for this shared mobility and trying to build up the technological base of the city on which this shared mobility is dependent. So it has helped in emergence of several entrepreneur culture for development of innovative shared mobility solution. And our country is comprises higher number of younger population, and this generation is more inclined in adopting these newer and innovative ideas. The shared mobility, which is dependent to a quite extent on the use of technology, the higher penetration of smartphone and better internet connectivity is boosting this shared mobility system. So today I will focus on two cities under Smart City Mission Scheme of India, that is Tier 1 and Tier 2 city, one New Delhi and Bhopal, and I will solely focus on bicycle sharing facilities in these two cities, present status and issues related to it, and I will give a small highlight on why this public bike sharing system is important under this COVID pandemic situation. So if I want to look into Delhi, Delhi is the first city in our country that introduces the cycle sharing system in 2016, and it was fully automated in 2018. There are several companies that is operating in Delhi like Green Ride, Smart Bike and Planet Green Bikes. There are total 72 docks existing presently, which comprises small, medium and large sizes. Since Delhi is a highly polluted city, public bicycle sharing is highly encouraged by the local government to curb down this pollution level, and it is seen that the public bicycle sharing scheme is able to reduce 3% carbon dioxide emissions since its inauguration. And moving towards Bhopal, it is a fully automated since its inauguration and is highly successful in connecting neighborhood educational institutes and hotel, and registered a total of 17,162 rides in its inauguration year in 2017 itself, and saved up to 5,325 kgs of carbon dioxide. So we can see that slowly India is trying to move towards a sustainable transportation facilities. But with this movement, there is always problems and backlogs associated with it. So the projects are mainly based on public and private partnership, but government is in majority of time is reluctant in providing necessary assistance. There is no integration among various stations of same operator as seen in many cases of Planet Green bikes in Delhi. The revenue generation doesn't cover operation and maintenance cost, which is kept really low at rupees 10 for half an hour rental basis. And in many cases, the network coverage connectivity among different areas is very poor, which the operator suggested is because of low demand. There is a lack of effort of creating awareness. Many Delhi people have reported that they are unaware of such services in their vicinity. And lastly, theft and vandalism is another important cause for its failure. So, during this pandemic situation, when the nature is trying to heal itself, public bicycles sharing scheme is a reliable and resilient option for all, which has also helped in decreasing fatality and reducing local air pollution and increasing physical activity, thus improves individual physical resilience. And several campaigns is being carried on in this support to revive cities transport after the lockdown. Like Satya Shankaran, a Bangalore bicycle mayor, along with Dr. Arvind Bhateja, a neurosurgeon, came up with a hashtag to reset with cycling with several sectors to revive cities transport after lockdown. So I would like to conclude by saying that a joint initiative of not only public-private partnership but also citizens' participation will help in better policy framework and a wider geographical coverage, a better data availability and development of digital infrastructure with safety and security measure will help in future development of microtransit and shared mobility services. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So we have another paper here on sharing that's looking at sharing, I guess, in relation to bicycles this time. Any questions from the people here? Thank you, Pooja. So I don't know, maybe I can ask the first question as I've been doing. Pooja, can you say something about the culture of sharing in this city? Are there other city resources that people are used to sharing? Could the bicycles become an extension of other ways of sharing, or are there not other opportunities? Let's say whether it's I don't know, maybe not car sharing, but perhaps things like sharing of, here in Switzerland we have libraries for sharing objects or appliances. Or what about sharing spaces, community centers, this kind of stuff?
The Uber and Ola services are highly used, and I am staying in Pune, in Maharashtra, in Mumbai. The bicycle sharing is they have started bicycle sharing scheme, but in few areas the theft and vandalism has occurred, and it is not in such much successful. Okay. So government is trying to revive on this, and yes, there are in few areas in Mumbai that a mobile library is taking place.
Okay. So I've just been told by Anna that actually the people who are attending can't necessarily speak up. So I've gone now into the Q&A box, and I see that there's a question there for Benjamin, which we can attend to in a moment, but I'll just go straight to the one for Pooja from Getu. So Getu is asking, do you think that the sharing mobility is the right way during COVID-19 era? I doubt this because we're expecting to keep social distancing at least 1 meter. However, cycle sharing is a good scheme to keep the social distance and health effects. So what do you think, Pooja, about cycling as a...
Cycling and e-scooter is highly encouraged during this COVID pandemic situation because we are able to maintain distance as well as help the nature to revive.
Okay, great. Thank you. So now I will open up in the last 8 minutes that we have before the break to a broader discussion. But before doing that, perhaps I can look at the question for Benjamin here in the Q&A from Getu again. So Benjamin, Getu is asking, and do you all see the Q&A? I guess you can, as the authors, you can also go in and respond.
I see it, yeah.
Okay. So for others, maybe it's about the saving. We alluded to this a little bit in our chat, didn't we? But that's, how can you account for savings that have to do with road safety, etc., and not only monetary savings?
So, G2, you said slower yeah, a vehicle is, the safer it is. So you can say as a rule of thumb, you can say it's right. So you can say the faster, the riskier. But I think especially for our study, you can't say that bicycles and public transport is safer than traveling by car. So especially in this case, you can't say this. And we looked at that the users of our cars don't drive like crazy with the small cars. So I think it was everything very safe, and we don't had some injuries or something like this in the 3 years, and there were over 300,000 kilometers that were traveled in the 3 years with the cars and the bicycles, and we don't have some injuries or accidents, and so I think it's all very safe.
Great, thank you. So to open up the conversation a little bit, maybe, this is a session about disruptive trends and inclusiveness. And I think underlying all of our presentations is how we can move to more sustainable forms of transport. And it just strikes me in listening to you as a sociologist, of course, that there is something about the context, the social, cultural context, institutional context, that really has an important influence on how change will come about. So for example, in the case of Sujaita in Mumbai, as long as the configuration of the home puts a lot of responsibilities on women, it's difficult to imagine homeschooling, domestic working and homeschooling actually for the children. For Benjamin, this idea of you living, this case happening in what you called a car-friendly city, right? So how do you change the culture around cars and move to other forms of transport as safer, potentially also healthier, etc. And maybe also the bicycle as a status symbol, how can that come to bear? And then in the case of New Delhi also, the question I alluded to earlier, how do you bring about sort of culture of sharing, and how do you support that? Through policies, through infrastructures, through different initiatives with the users, as Benjamin explained. So I wondered if all three of you could just comment briefly on how we can sort of address the structural dimension that tends to lock in unsustainable transport. Thank you. Benjamin, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I want to start. It's okay. So I think especially for companies, and especially in Germany, nowadays we have some incentives that are given for the companies to choose to a more environment friendly mobility solution. For example, the planned taxes for carbon dioxide. So they all have to think about today, what can they do to reduce the costs in the future? And further, there are some fundings for the electromobility. So you have some high costs if you want to invest in the loading stations and this electromobility vehicles. They are very expensive, but here are some fundings. And last but not least, you have the DIN and the ISO norm in Germany and in Europe and all over the world. So the 1400 series, maybe you know it. It's about all the environment friendly, how environment friendly companies have to be. And especially here in Chemnitz, you mentioned it, we are not the only ones here in the city see that the city is too car friendly. So nowadays we have some new bicycle lanes, and the car parking places get smaller and more expensive. So in the past, you have some free car parking places, and yeah, there were no incentive to drive with the bicycle or with the public transport if you can park your car for free in the middle of the city. And nowadays you have to pay some money for it, and yeah, there is an incentive today.
Great, thank you. So hopefully incentives will be enough, although I sometimes doubt that they can change cultural expectations.
Yeah, you see it. You can see it nowadays. There are some more bicycles on the road, and especially with the COVID-19 pandemic, this have changed the mind of some people too. They are walking and ride their bike more than
Yes,
a
great.
year ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Are there other comments from Sujayita or from Pooja? There's another question here from Silvan Andrashko asking, are the sharing systems in New Delhi and Bhopal also including electric bicycles? This could improve the distance which can be covered by sharing systems. So not just, let's say, regular bicycles, but motorized, small motor.
Yes, actually, Bhopal is trying to bring into the electric bicycle for their transportation, but now it is totally manual. But yes, like use of electric keys and GPS to track the bikes are being used.
Great, okay. Any other questions from the group? Does Sujayita, would you like to add anything as a final comment maybe on changing?
I would like to add, the idea of using bicycles is really great, but I feel for a city like Mumbai or for greater urban areas such as, these bicycle sharing can be done for small distances ideally, but where people travel for long hours, for instance, in Mumbai metropolitan region, traveling one way 50-60 kilometers is normal. I'm talking one way, it's normal. So 120 kilometers up down travel is normal. That cannot be done through bicycle. So there are more aspects that need to be thought of, like bringing workplaces closer to home, or getting our homes closer to workplaces. That can serve greatly in this regard. And with relation to my study, what I feel is the space, the home space for women, that needs to be improved. I mean, I'm talking about why women need to commute, but that is, of course, commuting is important. It gives them a change of mind. It gives them a diversion. They are able to, leave what is at home, and then they can start afresh in their offices or places of work. But in the end, they have to come back home, and then even after that, they have responsibilities. So why not share these responsibilities? I mean, every person should be responsible for their home. It is not something just the women of the family should be entrusted with. So there, of course, there are men who are sensible, they understand such things, but I think it should be practiced in a greater scale so that society will benefit.
Absolutely, thank you so much. And I just so that you know, Switzerland also, women have an unequal share of the domestic load. So it's not something, probably it's exacerbated in India, but it is an issue, I would say, in many other contexts as well. Well, thank you so much to our three speakers this morning. It's now time to take a 10-minute break. So congratulations to all of you. I guess I'll applaud you for your papers, and I'll see you again in about 10 minutes.